Okay, I'm going to take you, it's not going to take a long time, just a few bullet points, but I'm taking you all the way back to my first childhood memory. I was about 4 or 5 years old back in New York, and there was this like athletic competition that I was involved in where we were a bunch of little kids doing a beanbag toss to see who could throw the beanbag first. And the first kid came up there and he threw the bag like 10 feet or so, and the next kid came up there and he threw the bag, like 10 feet or so. Rob was standing there next to me, and he pulled me to the side and he's like, Gerry, hold the bag by the corner of the bag and just whip it, you know what I mean? Don't hold the, he was like giving me advice. So I took it from the corner and I whipped it like 50 feet. It was like crazy. I won the blue ribbon that day, and Rob was the one who had my back that day. And he's had my back ever since. Eventually, we moved to Los Angeles, and we shared a bedroom for like, for like 10 years or so, and we were very competitive, in sports, and we talked a little bit about Rob's competitiveness, and he was a few years older than me, but he used to work me hard, and he was better in basketball, but I think I had him in football and baseball. And eventually, he actually played basketball for a school called Montclair Prep, and it was a really loaded with talent. I was the team manager, and he wasn't a starter because the team was so loaded, but it was towards the end of the year, and we got into the playoffs, and we traveled all the way up to this small town called Levine, which is like near Mammoth Mountain. And we were losing by 10 points at halftime. And Rob came in the second half, and he did all this stuff and scored a bunch of points and sort of saved the season. And he did the same thing the next game. They ended up winning the state championship. It was one of the first times that a Valley school had ever won a state championship. And that was really cool. Eventually, he kind of liked to have a good time too, though, Rob, and he was really into long hair, and Montclair Prep had like a hair restriction, and that was one of the reasons he transferred to Birmingham for a season. He was, Rob was sort of like the 1970s cool guy, he had a really long blonde hair, and played drums in a rock band, and he had a lot of girlfriends and all that stuff, and he played piano, and I remember one day his band was playing in Encino Park, doing like a show, and they were playing metal. He was like influenced by like Black Sabbath, and those kind of things. His band was called Cold Hell. They never really made it, but that's what they called it. And everyone was like really into it. They really liked this band, and I was like so excited. And my dad says afterwards, he's like, Rob, I appreciated it, but it was so loud that it hurt my ears physically. And I thought, God, is that cool? That was just And one of the things that pushed me into the music business, I worked in the music business for like 15 years. And like I said, he used to, go to the Rainbow and the Starwood, and he was really into, going to Hollywood and stuff, even though he was still, a good student. He wasn't like a big party guy, but he loved to have a great time. And later, the second wave of glam rock came in, and I started wearing velvet outfits too, but I had sort of a different body type, and I played the trumpet. I just was never as cool as him. So eventually, he did meet Patty when he was going to USC. The part of the story that Beverly left out is that he was in a 21 and over club, even though he was 18, so he lied about his age. And he liked Patty so much that the family had to keep the secret for like 3 years or something. And as far as his salesmanship, he got that. He became a very successful textile and garment salesman. And he sort of got that and sort of harvested the skills it takes to be a salesman, because he was sort of delegated when like the three of us kids wanted like a family argument with the two adults on if we wanted something or some changes about TVs or curfews or any of that. Rob was sort of our delegate for that. He was an exceptionally gifted at getting his way. He sort of led all the way to why he was so powerful in the immigration world. He did eventually hit a wall when he wanted a mini bike, and he couldn't quite pull that off with our parents. He couldn't get the mini bike because there's actually an 11th commandment, which is Jews shall not ride a motorcycle. I've so many memories of Rob, both in happy and in tough times, and this is hard. But he has always been there for me 100%. My dad died 2 years ago. It was a very sad death because he died of a disease. So his mind was perfect, but his body had broken down and he couldn't breathe. He had a disease called myasthenia, which affects your muscles. And Rob was there every day in the hospital for like 6 months or something, and sort of carried my dad into heaven. I spoke to him the day before he died, my brother. He, as always, he was so dedicated to his family. We're going to get together this past weekend. He had died on Thursday night. And he just loved the really good things in life. He appreciated the finest foods, like we talked about. He was a gourmet chef, and he loved going to restaurants. Our families were known as foodies in the most positive sense that I can say. And he took it very seriously. He loved good food, and he loved traveling and going to nice hotels, and he loved golfing and fishing, and he loved concerts, and he looked sharp too. He wore nice suits, and he was well dressed and perfectly mannered, and always looked sharp. But most of all, he just loved sitting around watching TV with his family. That was his favorite thing. And he really loved my two daughters, Ginger and Tiana. And they loved him so much. When I spend time with Ginger and Tiana, I usually have to sweeten the deal with like, yeah, I'll take you to McDonald's or 7-Eleven, but Rob, they just wanted to be with him so much. And when we were in the hospital that night with his body, me and Alex were outside, and Alex was upset because he really wanted Rob to see him have a child one day, because he saw how much he loved Ginger and Tiana. And this is going to be a big piece of Rob that's going to live on forever. With Jesse, I'm a mess here, and Alex, and I just want to say that I'm going to miss my brother a lot, and that I love him very much.